Hello, we are at the Grand Palais in Paris for Monumenta 2011, and we shall welcome the British artist Anish Kapoor for his monumental work, Leviathan. Anish Kapoor, hello. When Monumenta asked you to perform this work, Leviathan, what did you think, mainly about this huge, imposing space of the Grand Palais, this cathedral of steel?
Well, yes, you're right. This is a very imposing, difficult space in which the light is crystalline. The light is almost brighter than the outside, and the space is almost bigger than the outside. The problem here, of course, is to deal with the huge horizontality and the verticality. I made myself a little model and used it as the basis from which to form a kind of conceptual idea about what's possible in the space. And before long, I had the notion that what I wanted to do was to kind of turn the space inside out. So the viewer is required to come into the Grand Palais and go into the interior of this beast of an object. And in that kind of place, or in that place, it's a sort of cathedral space. With the interior of these volumes, if you like. And then one comes out of that space, back out of the building, into the space between the building and the object. And of course, the two experiences don't fit. And that's one of the things that the work's about.
You are playing a lot with the monumental aspect of things. You performed Marsyas, a tremendous trump at the Turbine Hall of the Tate Modern, Cloud Gate at the Millennium Park in Chicago, Zweiamp, a tremendous block of wax at the Beaux-Arts Museum in Nantes, in France. But you do also some smaller things like I'm Pregnant, a beautiful opus, very minimal, in the wall, where there's a kind of hump. You are playing a lot with the scales of infinitely great, big, to small, even infinitely small. You like really to play with the scales to make us feel the idea of infinite.
In the world of objects, which we live in, all objects, it seems, have more than one possible interpretation, more than one history, if you like. And one of the histories of objects is, if you like, their immateriality, their relative non-object status. So I'm really interested in that idea that objects are transient in their process through our lives, or rather our relationship with them is transient. And scale, the size of an object, the size of an experience that you have with your body, is of course a tool of sculpture. It is what sculpture plays with, one of the tools that sculpture plays with. And I think it has the ability to evoke a certain kind of poetic reverie, a certain kind of poetic moment of dreaming. That's what I'm interested in, finally.
In fact, suspended time is, I think, a major element of your work. And for you, you were talking about trenchants. You were using this English word, trenchants, coming from the Oriental philosophy, from Buddhism. For you, time is almost as important as space. You like to suspend time. And when one gets into this tremendous sculpture, one feels like regressing into one's mother's womb. There's a kind, getting into the womb of one's mother. This is this kind of membrane. Tell us something about this time in your work. Time is very important.
Yes. I'm deeply interested, of course, also in color, especially in monochrome. So here I've chosen this very dark red bodily monochrome. Now, for more than one reason. Monochrome, if you like, in the right situation, in the right context, can be an instrument through which time is literally held in suspension. And, you know, it's as if the moment when one stands, if you like, in a kind of dream color space, it's as if time becomes a little longer. It's as if you lose yourself for a little moment. I think, you know, art is one of the few things in life that really allows that poetic reverie, that space where things just take a little longer.
Et cette rêverie poétique dont vous parlez, vous aimez
poetic dream you talked about, you like to set it into a public space because you're an artist that could work on curiosas, very small little private things, but you like this relation with the audience, with the public, with the visitor in a public space. I'd like to ask you a question about this opus Leviathan. People can circulate around, they can get into the work, as you said, they can circulate around it, but they cannot have a vantage point from the top. You forbade the vision of the work from the top. Why?
I'm of course, in this particular work, very interested in the idea that, you know, it occupies, if you like, or pushes a space that your body occupies. And then you're asked to put together the interior and the exterior. What I want to avoid is any sense that you get a kind of diagram of the object in your head. From nowhere can you see the whole thing. All views of it are partial. All views of it are, you know, tangential, through, or obscured. So this thing of not having the whole view, of having to construct it in your head, is part of what the work's about.
You're working with the phenomenal aspect. In fact, everything is fragmented, but this vertigo, the void facing your work, we have this feeling of void. For you, this notion of void is very important. It is not the one that we can experiment. In fact, the emptiness for you, void is different. Can you explain what you mean by void in your work?
So I think one of the important aspects, if you like, of what I was trying to talk about earlier, of the non-object, of the ephemeral part of the object, is essentially its voidness. Now, this is not to do with it being empty. And emptiness we understand in common language as being something where there is not something else. Void is something else in the sense that it is both empty and full. It is full in the sense that we fill it with our own kind of psychomatter. So part of the problem of the work here is that it's occupying a psychological space, a phenomenological space, as you say, and of course a very physical one. So those three things coming together is what it's really about.
Alors, Anish Kapoor,
we are here in this greenhouse of glass below your monumental work, Leviathan. Why this title, Leviathan?
Leviathan, Leviathan in English, is a beast who, from the underworld, in a way, from underwater, a beast who guards the gates to hell, in a way. Of course, that's a psychological condition, of course, that we all, at some level, know about. Now, his body is too big, unwieldy, unable to articulate itself fully. And it says something about sculpture, which is that sculpture, if you like, is a material, a basic material, unformed, and in its unformed state, able to be hugely expressive, maybe much more expressive than when it's made into a thing. That's one. The other is that monochrome has a kind of Leviathan quality. It is primal, it's color at a very basic kind of level. So that's an important idea. Hobbes, the political philosopher, used the Leviathan idea to illustrate the condition of the state, that it too is unwieldy, unable to hold itself. So I think, for me, there are lots of layers. You know, a title, in a way, is almost like giving the work another form, and these are layers of a potential meaning. They're not a descriptive formula.
Merci Anish Kapoor.
Thank you, Anish Kapoor. Stay tuned to France 24 and come and have a look at the Grand Palais to see Leviathan, Monumenta 2011, until June 23rd.